What's one side of entrepreneurship that's lesser talked about that you sort of maybe don't enjoy as much?
As much stuff as you put out there around, hey, we can't do this or we can't do Y, you'll always get those questions.
Once it starts making money, it becomes more realistic. There's an actual path. Once you're doing $2, $3, $4, $5 million a year, it becomes a lot more realistic.
So I immediately changed my entire sales pitch to around heavy research, very data driven. Here's how I can actually help your business.
What tools are you using for cold email sales, outreach, CRMs?
We have overarching goals, overarching projects that we're constantly working on, new tools, new data sets, etc.
What's the difference if you want to use big numbers of before you went data driven to after you went data driven?
Oh man, we always look at ROI, right? I think ROI is always my number one calculator when it comes to these kind of things.
Where did your entrepreneurial journey start?
I remember being entrepreneurial.
Hey guys, welcome back to Funds and Founders. We have James on today. I have this bit where I say that retention on YouTube is 3 minutes. So why don't you plug whatever you need to plug right now? We'll plug you again at the end. We'll link everything. Just tell folks who you are, where they can reach out, and what you're here about.
Absolutely. So my name is James Brewer. I'm one of the co-founders at Import Yeti. We use import and export data to do analysis. There's really three main categories of clientele that you'll see from us. First and foremost, if you're in logistics, obviously seeing where containers move, where they go throughout the U.S. Very helpful for all modes of transportation. If you're in purchasing or buy raw materials overseas, we're a fantastic way to figure out where people are getting goods or to find new suppliers, especially in current times. That's a pretty big topic for most people. Sort of the third category what we work in is risk analysis. So if you're, somebody who works in finance, somebody who needs to analyze, hey, if we go to war with China tomorrow, what happens to the stocks I've invested in? That's also another area. So how you can find us, importyeti.com. My email is james@importyeti.com. You can use the free version of our website, kind of get an idea what we do. And then we're more than happy to give a free trial out to anybody who emails me or emails the team and mentions this podcast.
But thank you for coming on the show.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. But what I wanted to get started with and what I like asking everyone is, where did your entrepreneurial journey start? Where is there a moment in time where you can recollect and say, hey, that's where this got implanted?
I know. I watched a couple episodes. I came somewhat prepared for that, and I tried to think hard about it. And the first time that I remember being entrepreneurial was in elementary school.
Okay. Me
and my buddies would draw comic books, just straight up from original storylines, and we tried to sell them in elementary school. That got shut down because they said, hey, none of this revenue can go to you. It has to go to the school. But that's the first time I can legitimately remember trying to start a business. But I think the full time I fully executed it was actually in college. I worked for the Crimson Heart Foundation. Basically, Mal Moore was a athletic director at Alabama. He's famous because he hired Nick Saban. And so I worked with his daughter, Heather Cook, who gave me a fantastic opportunity. So I really appreciated her and actually had to figure out how to sell a book from scratch. Nice. And so that was the first time where I legitimately say I was an entrepreneur.
What kept you going? What do you enjoy about entrepreneurship?
Oh, man. I think, the beauty of entrepreneurship is you find a problem. And you say, this doesn't have a solution that fits what I need. That's how Import Yeti started, but that's how I feel most really good businesses start, is you are your own customer. You're somebody who sees the problem. You're like, I want somebody to solve this. I want there to be a tool. You realize that there's nothing in the marketplace that solves that or meets those needs. And so you make it yourself. And then you find more people who also have that same problem, and it kind of spirals from there. And I think that's so fun because every single day I can put myself in the foot when I first joined Import Yeti and needed Import Yeti. And now I can do that with everybody, every customer I talk with. They're myself. There's somebody who had a problem, can't find a solution that fits it, and we can keep building a product off of that. So I think that's really cool.
What's one side of entrepreneurship that's lesser talked about that you sort of maybe don't enjoy as much?
So I think this is more me personally, but I do get tired of having the same questions all the time. And as much stuff as you put out there around, hey, we can't do this or we can't do Y, you'll always get those questions. And so for me, that's one. And then I think the second one is, I've luckily overcome this, but I definitely had a lot of trouble with it when I started out in business, taking it personally when somebody says no, because it's your baby, right? Yeah, it's you've made it. You're like, this is amazing. And then somebody's like, I don't like it. And you're like, oh, ow. Not taking that too seriously, I think is the hardest struggle.
I think one thing, so I've done traditionally a lot of product in my career. One thing I learned early on is to never get tied to something I've built, because the business is always going to make a decision on what's the right business decision. Do I need this? Do I not need this? Is this worth it? Not worth it? They don't care about your feeling of how much time and energy you spend into building it. Yeah. It could be the best product in the world. But if it doesn't make sense for the business to keep it up and running, they're just going to kill it. And that was the first time I was like, let me focus on the process. I should enjoy the process and enjoy going from problem to idea to solution to build to user.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter whether it gets killed, I just pick up another problem solution, right? So I thoroughly agree that there's some entrepreneurs that get so tied to the idea of like, but I can't kill it. It should work. It has to work. Like,
Right.
but if there's information that's been surfaced that tells you that, hey, this may not be the right model, the right business model, you got to pivot. You should be okay with letting it go and moving on, right? So
Yeah.
I thoroughly agree with that. What were you doing before you joined Import Yeti?
So I worked in logistics for a while, and then I went to a VC startup as head of sales. Did that for about a year, exited when some new money came in. They were taking a little bit of a different direction. Sort of how I ended up at Import Yeti was I was user number 3 on the platform. Just kept talking to Dave and slowly but surely convinced him to let me become a consultant for the sales side. Eventually became part of the founding team. The joke at Import Yeti is Dave founded the product and I founded the revenue. So that's
Nice.
kind of like how we split our duties amongst the two co-founders.
Why were you first a big user there? What were you
Yeah.
using Import Yeti for?
Yeah, so when I worked in logistics, I was an incredibly data-driven person, and I actually had a very aha moment in my sales journey pretty early on in my career, which I'm always thankful for. It was his name was James at Johnson Controls, and so I was doing, I'm fresh out of college. They give you a script, I'm following the script, right? And I'd called this guy because I'd done some research on Johnson Controls, and I knew that I had extra trucks that were available in Columbus, Ohio, and they had a massive plant in Columbus, Ohio. So I was calling him because I wanted to get some outbound from that facility. I'm going through my pitch, and he goes, "This sucks." I was like, "What?" He's like, "I get 99 of these phone calls a day. You need to stand out." And so I said, "Wait a minute. I'm calling because I deliver 2 miles outside of your facility in Columbus, Ohio at this address. I have capacity to reach outbound from here." And he goes, "Okay. You should lead off with that in every phone call." So I immediately changed my entire sales pitch to around heavy research, very data driven. Here's how I can actually help your business. And so Import Yeti came out. I was using that data to help me do sales because I could see, somebody brought, because I did drayage. Drayage is essentially the movement of a container from the port to a warehouse.
Got it.
And so I would do a lot of drayage, and obviously seeing who was bringing in containers into what ports was incredible data. So I could call people up and say, "Hey, I know that you moved 28 containers into the Long Beach port last month. I currently have 5 extra chassis available that can move every day and go to your facility in whatever zip code it was." And I'd had a ton and massive success off of that. And so I was just very aggressive around it. And
Were you doing this for yourself, a different company? Who are you doing this for?
yeah, so that was for a combination of companies. So I worked at a large brokerage, and then I worked at an asset-based company. So I did it at both companies. But yeah, I was working for somebody else. It was semi-entrepreneurial because obviously you had your own book of business and you had to work on.
And you were making money based off of like what you brought in, right?
Oh yeah,
So,
commission checks based on how much margin you got between what the customer paid you and what you were paying the truck.
How are you doing this outreach, right? So like just dive a little bit deeper into like what data you're accessing through Import Yeti. And then I also know like the way Import Yeti gets data is super interesting. So if we can cover that.
Yeah, so we get all of our data from Customs and Border Patrol when it comes to the U.S. data set. So they publicly release information. We get hundreds of thousands of BOLs every single month, and then take that data and put it into a much more readable, digestible, and searchable database.
Isn't bill of lading something you have to request? Or?
Yeah, so we have to request that from Customs and Border Patrol. There's forms that we've gone through where basically they will send us the raw data files, which makes it a little bit easier. So we have to request that. The kind of data within there, it tells you what kind of goods are being moved, who is buying it in the United States, who is the foreign supplier that has those goods. It'll even tell you what vessel it came across on, what port is it going to. And so I would use a lot of that data to understand, of course, where those goods were moving. It also tells you the weight of the goods, which was helpful because there's a thing called overweight containers. So basically, if it's over 56,000 pounds on a 20-foot long container, you have to have a triaxle, which is something that's not as common.
Got it.
I had created a base of carriers that had triaxle.
Nice.
So I would hit up people and basically say, "Hey, I know that you have 58 overweight containers coming to the Port of Savannah, Georgia. I have current triaxle capacity based on your distribution center. Here's my rate quote from the Port of Savannah to your distribution center." So it went from, these cold calls where it's, "What are you doing? How can I help you?" to, "I know I can help you. Here's my rate. And if you want to talk, let's talk." Skyrocketed my career for sure.
Nice. What's the difference if you want to use vague numbers of like before you went data driven to after you went data driven?
Oh man.
Like if you're doing $100 before, what are you doing after?
I added a comma for sure. It was, hundreds of thousands a month to millions a month. So yeah, it was a big boost for me. I think part of that was the sales style, but a lot of that is attributed to the data.
And with trucking, my understanding is you pay per mile, right?
There are plenty of different models. You can just have a flat rate. So hey, I need it to go from Port of Savannah to Charleston. No, Charleston's another port. Sorry, Port of Savannah to like Calhoun, Georgia, flat rate. Usually when people use per mile basis, those are usually based on like yearly bids. But if you're doing something spot, hey, I have a couple containers coming in next month. Hey, here's your all-in rate. And there's other things like accessorial. So it kind of actually depends on the operations model.
I'm surprised that people who have containers coming in are not already do not already have trucks booked.
Yeah.
To like
so
take their container.
International shipping is so fun. We might need another 3 hours if we want to dive into that. But the ships themselves, they can get to port at a certain place,
but
that
waiting at port.
Doesn't mean they've docked. Doesn't mean the containers come off. You also have to get an appointment with the actual port to go pick up the container itself. So there's a lot of variables within there. Honestly, port drayage is very complex because of all those factors. You can say you've got a container coming in, but I can't have a truck waiting unless the Port of Savannah has actually offloaded it and it's available to be taken out of the port itself. So they'll usually have a carrier booked in general. Like you would do a contract rate with somebody and they would say, okay, I know that you're $800 for Savannah to my facility every time, but sometimes, you have to fight to get capacity. You have to fight to get those appointments. So
interesting.
Yeah, logistics is never perfect, which is why.
Is this what Flexport is trying to solve?
Flexport is one of the people who does it. So Flexport has more of a digital model. They focus on also ocean freight as well. So they're what's called a freight forwarder. So a freight forwarder is essentially somebody who books capacity on these massive steamship lines because there's only about 7 or 8 of them in actuality. So they're kind of a monopoly in sense. But what they'll do is they'll book up 100 containers worth of a ship at a time, and then resell that to smaller people who don't have the volume to work directly with them.
Okay.
Like a Walmart, for example, they're booking directly with the actual ocean line.
Yeah.
But a freight forwarder, if it's, Tina's teacups, they got 1 container every 3 months. They're not going to, the steamship line's not going to bother with them.
Makes
so
sense. You're using Import Yeti, making a ton of money. Why do you now go to Dave, reach out to Dave? Like, how does that conversation happen? What is that conversation?
Yeah.
And what I want to highlight is just, I don't know if this is the right way to put it, but like the idea of creating opportunity for yourself.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of founders who want to do this, but they don't have the right idea, traction. There's always an option to go and associate yourself with a tool, a company, a person, a founder who has something that's working, and you can be that chief of staff, right hand, co-founder, whatever, right? Like you figure out the title, but just highlight that a little bit, that equation, that journey.
Yeah. I'm somebody who doesn't take no for an answer very often, or at the very least, I'll wait until you actually tell me no. I think a lot of people are like, oh, no response is no. Having called a lot of C-suite people, because usually I would start at the C-suite because at the end of the day, they can sign your check. So why not sell to them? You can't just take no answer for nothing. And so Dave is such a kind person, and it's one of the biggest pillars of our company is him and I's availability for any user. We have calendars where you can book time with us. We listen to every user because when Import Yeti started, Dave will say this too, it was not a good platform. It was not good at all.
But I want to say I've reached out about a couple of bugs.
We
super early, but
we appreciate that. Well, that's huge because we want to get 1% better every day with our platform. And so being able to listen to our community is huge. And so what I did was I would book time with Dave and I would have conversations with him and I would say, look, I think we can make some, this can be a serious revenue generating thing if you add some additional filters. And at first the conversation was, follow back with me in 3 months. And so I followed back with him in 3 months. And then I followed back in 2 months, 1 month. And then it started, we met weekly. And so he allowed me to basically do some consulting for a while, where I was doing basically freelance sales, commission only type stuff, proved that obviously I could sell this because I knew the logistics industry very well. And long story short, came to him and said, look, I want to be a part of this for real. And I want ownership. What makes that happen? And luckily enough, he said, yeah, you're doing a great job. Let's do this. So I think I was very lucky in the fact that Dave is such an open person.
Yeah.
And if you have the will and drive, Dave will listen to you.
Nice.
But you got to keep following up with him. At the end of the day, I knew that Import Yeti was something that I loved as a platform and had used so much. I was like, if I'm not on this team in some way, there's a mistake. Like I need to get on this. And so I just didn't stop following up and it worked out.
And then I don't know if you can say details, but what does that relationship look like? Right? You're coming in after the platform is built. There's some sort of traction. How do you understand and define that relationship, right? Because for anyone listening who wants to do this, how do they even approach it and make sure they're getting their values worth? Because it's very easy for a founder to be like, oh yeah, I'm hiring you a CTO. You get 1.5% equity vested over 4 years and some base salary. Yeah. But how do you fight for that? How do you prove your value? How do you even have that conversation?
Yeah. I mean, so we started off just commission. And so For me, it was, hey, at least I'm getting a good paycheck, right?
Yeah.
But we went with the sweat equity model. So basically, after 6 months of doing the freelance, kind of modeled out, hey, this is kind of what the growth path I would expect. Came to him with that model and said, look, here's the, when we hit these revenue goals, I would like, ownership percentage. And so we went back and forth a little bit on the numbers, not too aggressive. And eventually he said, yeah, that works. And we signed a contract. So,
Nice.
I have a contract for, obviously as a salaried co-founder, but also then we have all of the marks for equity gain for hopefully
Like different targets.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
So all the way up until hundreds of millions of dollars. So we planned that out very specifically, which is nice. I don't think that you at home, if you're doing this, you don't have to be that aggressive.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I knew that this was something I wanted to be in for a very long time. So we pre-baked all of that in, so that way there were no question marks along the way,
Nice.
and that was really great. And I appreciate
And
Dave so
the
much
reason
for that.
I like that, and one thing I'd like to highlight is it's really easy for like, I want to say the product was doing 0 to no revenue before you join, versus once it starts making money, it becomes more realistic. There's an actual path. Once you're doing $2, $3, $4, $5 million a year, it becomes a lot more realistic. Very easy for someone to say, yeah, we like up until 5, you were getting 5-10%, but now you're getting half. You would you want that to be pre-understood of like, hey, if we're doing 400 million next year in top line revenue, here's what I expect because you contributed to that, right?
Yeah.
So I like that you planned out that far. Even if you don't stick around or it doesn't happen, you get whatever happens or whatever you get acquired. It's not uncomfortable conversation you'll have to have, because I want to say more often than not, I've been in a couple of these conversations with like really old college mates where we're having equity discussions and revenue discussions for a product that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
But as soon as it starts existing, it becomes a lot more real.
Yeah.
If there's potential for funding, it's like you start seeing who's like, oh no, I want a bigger share, because now it's actually something.
Yeah.
Versus when it was nothing, yeah, everyone's equal percentage. But the second a check comes into the equation, it's like, oh no, I want 18, 19, whatever, right? So I just find it very funny how it's very easy for humans to just instantly switch.
Yeah.
Mentality, right?
Get it in writing. Always get it in writing.
Yeah. Even if it's on a napkin.
Yeah.
Even if it's on a napkin.
Or
Sweet.
just sign in triplicate.
But yeah, are you able to say roughly, even just like ballpark numbers of like you joined, what's that growth been like?
Yeah.
What does Import Yeti do? 6 figures, 7 figures, whatever.
Yeah,
whatever
yeah. So I mean, the numbers I always give out publicly
Yeah.
is, so we have a premium version of our platform and the free version of our platform. Free version of our platform, we have 2 million unique visitors every month.
Nice.
On the paid version of the platform, we have over 150,000 paid users.
Nice.
So you can do the math if you go on our website and look at
Nice.
the pricing model, what we're doing there. But yeah, I don't like talking numbers
that's
too
fine. Yeah,
much,
yeah,
just
yeah.
simply because
The reason I like just having
we don't
some
like to
numbers-
brag about that. We like to brag about the individual users, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
We are bootstrapped and self-funded and profitable at this point. So for us, this isn't like, we got to go sell this tomorrow.
Yeah.
If somebody wants to offer us $1 billion, please let me know. I'll take it. For us, we're profitable. We're both making money. We're very, very happy with it. And so we want to make sure that we look at how many people are on the platform rather than what is that end revenue number. Of course, with our budgeting system, we do look at the actual numbers, but I think how many people we have on the platform is a lot more important to us than how much money are we making.
The reason I like asking numbers is just it quantifies and makes something just a lot more realistic, right?
Yeah.
Like for people to understand what's possible, what's not possible, right? Because I think one thing that when I started first being involved with tech and startups in general is just the understanding of like, okay, I can build this software, but like what is realistically possible? Like, can I make $1,000 a month? Can I make 10 grand, 20? Like having those numbers just makes it a lot more tangible.
When we started
something
out,
that's-
we
you
were
can break
incredibly happy to make $10,000 a month.
Yeah.
Now that would be a very bad month.
Yeah.
That's how I'll put it.
Yeah. Nice. That's cool. Let's break down. You join the company. What systems do you start putting in place?
Yeah.
What tools are you using? How does it work? I don't know how much you know about the tech side, but if you want to cover,
Sure.
here's our tech stack. Here's how we make it better. Just
Yeah.
that ecosystem of like building a bootstrap company, right? Because you don't have VC money. You can't hire random headcount because I need to do this. You can't hire consultants.
Yeah.
So how do you think about that?
I have a very interesting background because both my parents were computer programmers and I grew up in Silicon Valley. So I can't I can somewhat program, and like the worst, I'd be like a first grade level programmer if I attempted it. I can read a text, but I definitely cannot make anything. So shout out to our programming team. You guys are amazing. Kind of where my skill set is I can take what a user wants to do, and then I can put that in our programmer's language and say, hey, these are kind of the systems we need to create around it. And then they can go in and actually code. But in terms of tech stack, for me, I'm very big on automation. I think there's a ton of just manual tasks that people continue to do, and they refuse to spend the $500 a month to go get a program that does it for them, right? So number one thing in our automation tech stack is calendars. Dave and I both have our calendar links. We've got specific levels based on priority levels. If it's in an actual emergency and you are a top client, you have you can get me in 5 minutes calendar link.
Nice.
But all of our users have the ability to book time with Dave or I within certain time windows, 15-minute blocks, 30-minute blocks. That's incredibly helpful.
Free or paid?
Yeah.
Nice.
Anybody who has any sort of questions, we're happy to answer them, because quite frankly, without the users, we wouldn't improve. But that was number one, because that saves a ton of time for us. It takes out the, hey, I'm free this window. Are you free this window? Yeah. Right? That's I hate that. I absolutely hated that when I worked in sales. So that was number one.
My only comment there is there's been so many times where someone doesn't show up and you get blocks on your calendar that you may be prepping for that end up being just wasted blocks. That's one caveat with Calendly, where what I've been doing lately is if I'm like, hey, let's do this, I send you 2 times or 3 times. I'm like, here's an option. Yeah. Does it work for you or not? If it doesn't, I'll revisit or not. Maybe it's not. It's going to get pushed for whatever. But that just forces sort of, because if I send you a link, you're like, I'll look at it, I got to pull up my calendar. Ends up never happening versus A or B, pick one. If not, you counter with other times, and then I just pick one.
Interesting.
But it's just because I've seen a lot more conversion with actual book. This is different because it's a customer, so it's more feedback you want, so you're open. But just in general, something.
I mean, same thing for new clients as well. I will block emails if somebody shows up books it 4 times and then doesn't show up. My rule is you are blocked. I've only had to do that with one person. Yeah. Still can't believe that they booked me 4 times.
Probably know who they are.
You're probably not watching this. I hope you're not. But I honestly, sometimes I'm not upset when somebody no-shows, because I have so many emails in my inbox every day. I'm like, okay, cool. Now I have more time to go at least call people and respond to some emails. So if you're a busy person, you're not always upset. But what's nice about that too is, like, if I know that my calendar's pretty full for the day, I'll put in a block, because I know that I have to spend like an hour and a half making phone calls and follows up. So that's great too. And then I can also set what days, what times. Which is also great with our international clients, because I always work out from like 3:30 to 5 is my workout window. But then I've got 6 to 7 open on my calendar in case somebody in India, England, etc. wants to meet with us. So it's cool that I can set what windows and what hours are available. I think
3:30 a.m. to 5 or 3:30
3:30 p.m. I am not an a.m. person. Absolutely not. I've tried working out in the morning once in my life on an empty stomach, and I will never do it again. I need to have like 3 meals in me before I'm ready to go.
Nice.
Number 2 with the tech stack, we do a ton around usage. So how many page views is somebody viewing on the free platform? So if we can understand what somebody is doing on the free platform, if there's somebody who's using it a lot, we recognize that person is somebody who's going to be A, probably interested in using our premium tools, but B, if they're using it that much, we want to get their feedback, right? So we do a lot of automation around that, so that way people automatically get email follow-ups. We offer them free trials. We ask for their surveys on new opinions. If you're somebody who uses the platform a lot, we actually give you access to beta tools to test them out before we even launch them. So we have our own kind of internal ranking of users on how much they use the platform. We're doing a lot more cool stuff with that, and that should actually be released here in the next couple months, where they will actually start getting rewards like swag, like some of these hats that you see here, and things like that, so we can say thank you to the people who actually make our business work. So a lot of cool things that we do with that. So that was number 2 on automation. Doing flows around emails, getting people who we know, this is somebody who's very likely to want to use premium tools. That helps our sales process very easy. I mean, that was the main focus, was taking that large chunk of free users and how do we monetize that, and not in like an aggressive way, because I feel like when people say how do we monetize that, it's always like, let's just get all the money. It was like, who actually fits and is wanting to do data analysis at the level that would make sense for our premium tools. Was really focusing on outbound. So for me, something that I learned when I was at Anthill, which was the VC startup I was at before Import Yeti, it was a company that focused on frontline workers, and the idea that 20% of the frontline workforce doesn't have a cell phone. They still use a flip phone. So if you ask them to download ADP, they can't do that. Yeah. And so what we did at Anthill was we actually took because they're incredibly cheap. Flip phones. So we bought $10 flip phones, pre-programmed it with our text messaging system, and then I mailed those to the COO of like the Fortune 500 companies, and we got massive responses. So the first thing I did with Import Yeti, we have a ton of cool swag. Mugs is one of the things that we send out quite often. If you're probably watching this, you probably have a mug already, to be honest, because if you're a major user, you've been offered a mug at some point. But
so who are you targeting? Are you targeting logistics companies? Like how do you?
Yeah.
Who's your ICP?
Yeah. So for me, I initially targeted logistics companies just from where I came from. So I was targeting like the chief revenue officer of every top 100 trucking company and just sent them a mug and said, hey, if you could find this data on your clients tomorrow, do you think that's worth it? If yes, scan this little QR code. You get a free trial. You can mess around with our premium tools for 30 days. I'm going to ask you what you think. You can say yes or no. But
Nice.
that works really well. Bubble mail, that's probably something I'd tell every founder, but bubble mail is like the number one open thing. If people get an actual package, we actually have packages where it looks like a container. And our mugs actually say what search we use to find the mug supplier to get those mugs from overseas. So we're incredibly aggressive around doing things like that to make sure it all ties.
What's your
into
cost?
I mean, it's,
So like when I say,
Yeah.
you don't have to say like specific cost, but
Yeah.
like you're doing bubble mailer, cup, swag.
Yeah.
How much do you spend on that per month versus
Yeah.
what's your return on spend?
I mean, I'm probably spending only like $300 a month when it comes to it after buying the mugs. I won't say what we bought the mugs for, but it's very cheap to buy goods overseas, which is
Yes.
nice. So we didn't spend too much on the mugs initially,
Okay.
though we did buy like 280 boxes of which each had 16 mugs. So it was a lot of mugs, but no, I mean, we're probably.
Honestly, the logo's also changed since I first saw it.
Yeah, people love the Yeti. It's been, we got a really cool graphic designer who does a lot of cool things. We're actually starting to come out with some alternative logos for
Nice.
like different holidays and things like that. So we're going to have like Xmas and
Nice.
Hanukkah Yeti. And so we're pretty excited about some of that stuff. But we're trying to get a little bit more swag because people always ask for swag. So we want to kind of make some more exclusive stuff. But I must say the logo has really resonated with people, which is
Nice.
fun. I think it actually makes it a lot more memorable than most of the people in our marketplace. People connect with the Yeti. And if you see our website, anytime we have like FAQs, you'll see like the Yeti, like, oh, why are there so many records? And he's like carrying like like a file case. So, but yeah, I mean, it's maybe like $300 in shipping after it comes to buying the package around it, putting in the sticker, putting in the actual stuffing. I mean, it's honestly, it's, I've got like 10 boxes in my garage, and every week I just print out all the labels, make them, and send them out. And I'm sure my USPS driver hates me,
Nice.
but I make sure that we buy him something nice for Christmas every year because
Nice.
he constantly picking up boxes from my house. He must be tired of it. Yeah, it's honestly not that expensive.
How do you do attribution? Because we were talking
Yeah.
about your stack.
Mhm.
How do you do attribution for all these things?
For us, we always look at ROI, right? I think ROI is always my number one calculator when it comes to these kind of things. So, hey, if I, sent out $400 worth of mugs as a cold outreach, was there a return on that? It's a little easier to do calculations when it comes to existing users because we understand how long they've been a premium user and how much they use the platform. So essentially, once you hit a certain level, we think you've earned a mug,
Yeah.
right? So, without diving too deep into the statistics, for us, we're very big on crawl, walk, run. I think that's something that's really awesome about our company is we will try anything, but we'll try it very conservatively, right? And so the mug thing, initially was, smaller packages, not a full ceramic mug. It was just a little bit of swag. And we saw people were like, I got swag, I want more. And so we keep building it up, and now we're even expanding into swag even more. But it's the same thing when it comes to any process for us. Hey, A/B testing emails. Does this email get more opening, or does phrasing it this way get more opening? Hey, if we do a trial for 30 days versus 15 days, are we getting better responses? When we send out the trials, how many people are actually responding to us after we've started the trial? So all these things we do internal metrics on and always check out, how much of a return do we get from it? And then we tweak it and we see what did we do wrong? How can we make it better? And if you're not analyzing in that method for everything that you do within a company, I think you're wasting your time. You shouldn't try something and not understand was it worth it.
What tools are you using for cold email sales, outreach, CRM stuff? Like, just if you could
HubSpot.
briefly hit.
I love HubSpot. I love HubSpot.
HubSpot sponsor this podcast.
Yeah, HubSpot, hit me up. HubSpot, ironically enough, they denied me a referral agreement, and I was so upset because I tell everybody about HubSpot. I was like, what the heck, man? So if you're at HubSpot and watching this, please give me a referral code because I tell everybody about HubSpot. HubSpot, it's cheap. It's $500 for 5 seats a month. Cool. You can send up to 500 emails a day per account. I don't know. I remember when I was putting in people, I ran out of people to run through algorithms when I combined it with Zoom Info. It's, Salesforce is something where you're going to need a programmer to customize it. HubSpot, internal videos, there's plenty of apps where you can just turn things on, turn things off. I think it's perfect. If you don't have to be a computer programmer to know it. You're going to have to spend a little time learning how to do it. But it gives me everything I need. It gives me automated emails. It lets me track all my people. And it also gives me the calendar link. Yeah. So those are the three things I cared about. So I think I just have HubSpot Professional, $500 a month. Nice. It is not a big cost at all. And it does really almost everything that I need. Nice. The other tool I got to give a big shout out to is Fathom. That's what we use for emails. That thing is amazing. It lets me put in pre-designated responses, so I can put response templates in for anything. Saves me so much time during my day.
Isn't Fathom a note taker?
Oh, did I say Fathom? I meant Front. I apologize. Okay, we do use Fathom as well. Fathom is a note taker. Yeah, Front. It's called Front. Front. Front, fabulous mail system. Lets me put in templates. Lets me basically say,
unified inbox or single inbox?
So we have multiple inboxes. We can assign within it, which is really cool.
Nice.
So it makes our life super easy, lets us be incredibly fast for responses, and it's really great because I can snooze emails and say, okay, I want to follow up at this point, and without having to do that within HubSpot, because I actually find it's a little bit harder to do that workflow in HubSpot than it is with Front, just simply because it'll bring up the email. And then it's saying, hey, you should follow up with this person that, you sent a quote to.
How do you guys split up tech, product, ops, sales? How are you guys managing responsibilities?
Yeah. So, it's myself and one other person focused on sales. Everybody else is really focused on the product stack.
Got it.
The product is what drives it. If the product's good, sales is easy. So I think I honestly have a very easy life with sales because I do think the product sells itself. And that's why we focus heavily on free trial, because once people use it, they get hooked. I jokingly say it's the drug dealer, first one's free, right? So, but in all honesty, when we focus on things, everybody's got different subsection of troubleshooting, right? Hey, we're having trouble with, maybe our back-end accounting with charging somebody. Okay, that's, this team. Hey, we're having trouble with our API keys. It's this team. So we split that up. And so there's different people who basically own different portions of troubleshooting. Most of what I focus on is user experience and user questions. So the idea of, I have this particular problem, what filters do I use? How do I go about finding data for this? Some of my favorite conversations are figuring out, hey, I've got this weird thing that I'm trying to find. Can your data find it? And I'll work with them and say, okay, we can use these data points. We don't exactly know this information, but, if you want to figure out how many golf carts your competitor is bringing in, if you take the weight of all the containers that they shipped last month, divide that by what a golf cart weighs, you got a rough estimate of how many golf carts they imported. So things like that is where we split it up. And I think we do a very good job as a team of being very communicative. And I think it's a big reason why Front is so helpful, though, is because you can assign emails to individual people.
Nice.
And you can put as many comments as you want. You can even make a draft and say, hey, check this out. Let me know if it's good to send. So it makes doing that super easy. We have Slack as our communication system as well. But honestly, most of it's in Front because we can just put a little note with whatever we want. Say, hey, I'm, at whoever it is, I'm thinking about doing this, or hey, is this the best process that we should use? Or is there a different way you want me to do this? Because we're changing up how we're doing our charging or how we're doing our APIs. So, just constant communication, and everybody owns it. And I got to shout out to our team because our team, they own it. When we assign something to somebody on our team, they own it, they take pride in it, and they love Import Yeti. So I shout out to everybody on our team.
So you guys are a pretty small team, pretty agile, no product, tech, sales. There's not different leaders you need to go get alignment with.
Yeah.
So how do you guys think about planning? Are you planning a month out, a quarter out, a year out?
It's day by day, honestly. Okay. It's not in we're, juggling or putting out fires. It's more, what's really cool is we have, sprints. We have different areas where we're focusing on specific tools. But a lot because of what our customers bring up, I think one of the coolest things about our company is people will be like, hey, I need a filter for this. I'll give an example with our Mexico data set. We had a phone call where somebody was like, oh, there's the actual cargo value within this data set, which is incredibly important to some people because they have the ability to do transportation for goods that are over a certain dollar amount. And they said, if it's in here, can we get a filter for it? And our response wasn't, we'll put it into the next sprint. I slacked the guy who was in charge of the Mexico data set. I said, can we add a filter for this? He said, yes, it's up. And so that's how we kind of like to
Nice.
handle things, is like, hey, does this make sense? How hard is this? If it's not hard, let's just add it. Somebody asked for it. Somebody else is going to need it.
Yeah.
So we have overarching goals, overarching projects that we're constantly working on, new tools, new data sets, etc. But there is, stuff that just comes in day to day that, hey, this is a really great idea. It exists within the data set. If we just add a couple parameters around it, it can be a filter for every user, and let's just do it.
What's the North Star that you guys drive towards? Is it number of users? Is it revenue? Is it, how do you think about that? Because you said 150,000 users.
Yeah.
Do you guys have like hey, we want to hit 500K in the next X amount of time? Or like, how do you guys think about, because the reason I ask is those North Star metrics are what drive your daily, weekly priorities and drive your innovation level, right? So like if you're hitting a cap at your current feature set, you need other features to get that 500K goal.
Yeah.
But if you're okay with the 150 and you maybe just want to up revenue, there's probably other ways to up revenue that are not necessarily product innovation. But does that make sense?
I think we've achieved less than 1% of our market cap, in my opinion, when I do my analytics.
So I would say there's two levels, right? Like when you say market cap, I'm thinking number of users and revenue per user, right?
Yeah.
Because
I think
both
for
can
us,
change. Yeah.
we're huge on not being the SaaS company that sucks to work with. Because there's a lot of SaaS companies that suck to work with.
Yeah.
Hey, you got to sign a 3-year contract. Let people do month to month. We let them do annual. You don't have to sign a contract with Import Yeti. We're not the company where we're going to lock you in for a long time. And to be fair, because we're not VC funded, we don't really have to do that. I get why other SaaS companies have to do that. So I would say our North Star, and it's been our North Star since day one, Dave will say it as well, get 1% better every day.
Okay.
If we can make this product 1% better every day, we're doing something right. For me in sales, my North Star is honestly just how fast can we get conversions right now. I think for me, it's about how quickly can we get a new user to a paid user. I think that's...
What is that cycle right now for you?
Oh man, it's incredibly variable. I mean, we have people who have been on the platform since day one that just signed up yesterday, and I get Slack messages every time somebody signs up, and so I'll always go look and see, how was the process, what was the email, and it'll be something like they emailed Dave like 6 years ago, and you're like, wow, okay. But for us, it's more not about cycle; it's about how many page views. If we can get somebody to do 500 page views, I honestly think they're always going to become a customer.
Unique page views or just page views in general?
We do unique in our calculations, but probably if somebody's coming back to a client that often, they probably are going to be it. But the metric that we use internally is unique page views.
Okay. And what are you using for tracking? Is it inbuilt or post-hog or mixed panel or something like that? Or
mixed panel.
So you guys have that North Star, just be a little bit better every day. How do you juggle varied customer asks? Because I can see that becoming very clunky on the software side really quick, right? Like he wants this, and now I have like 18,000 filters, right? Yeah. So like someone new to the platform, it's too much too soon. So how do you juggle that?
I think our user interface is so easy for a new user that the free version is very simple. Like it's not expansive by any means. In terms of juggling what people want within our user base, Dave and I are somewhat of a mouthpiece for that. We're talking, if you look at my calendar, it looks like a Christmas tree. I mean, that thing's full every day. And it's always funny because people will ask me what the calendar link. They're like, hey, can you meet in 5? I'm like, absolutely not. You have every free time that I have on this calendar. Please just book one of them. But, somebody asks for it multiple times. It makes sense to us, right? Hey, okay, multiple people have asked to us. But we also can do some inference ourselves, right? Dave is incredibly good at purchasing. He's done international purchasing for a long time. I would like to say that I'm incredibly good at logistics. That's my side of the company there. But we can kind of understand, okay, if this person is trying to analyze this data, that's something where we can turn around and put that into multiple use cases for our users. Let's prioritize that. Makes sense. We have requests where, it's something that, hey, we might get to it in 3 months, but we know what people are asking for aggressively. We also know what aligns with our current metrics as well, right? What are the current things we're looking towards? Like tariffs, right? Tariffs is huge for us right now. People are asking us stuff about tariffs. We're already somewhat building this around tariffs. Okay, let's add this feedback to it because we know we can then add that into the existing sprint. So it's kind of an art form right now, which it's an odd answer, but it's working. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it, in our opinion. But you have, this is a weird answer, probably not an answer that's going to work for everybody. But it works for Dave and I. And it's, we listen to the users every day. We know what they do or don't want, and we can tell what's going to fit within our sprints and do it that way without getting too far off track.
Going back to the business a little bit, what's stopping someone else from going to CBP and getting the same data?
Yeah, I mean, that's where our competitors get their data.
Are there a lot of competitors?
I would say there's 2 areas of competitors that I see. There's lower cost providers who limit the amount of searches, limit downloads, don't have as much of data or advanced tools. There's more expensive platforms because they will get data like Spain to France. So really where we say, hey, we're amazing is North America. If you're doing business in North America, we want to be the best price platform. We give you the most stuff for the least amount of money is kind of what I like to say.
So you're basically doing all the bill of ladings for into the U.S. and then you work around that data.
Yeah, so we have every bill of lading that enters or exits the U.S. from CBP. We also have a Mexico data set. That Mexico data set lets us see more than just ocean containers. It also lets us see air and ocean in and out of Mexico, as well as full truckload and intermodal out of Mexico. So it lets us see a lot of data when it comes to truckload and anything cross-border between Mexico and the U.S. But it also allows us to see where people are getting goods into Mexico from, which is a pretty big thing with nearshoring right now. So those are the two data sets that we have out right now. We are adding a third data set that actually allows us to see some information around goods being brought down from Canada, as well as any air shipments coming into the U.S., which is very exciting as well. That's already
Do
in
air
beta
shipments not need a bill of lading?
Yeah, so bill of ladings only apply to ocean containers.
Got it.
And basically a bill of lading says, hey, I have this many containers on this ship entering your country, and this is where it's happening. So that's sort of how bill of lading is kind of it's one, telling people how you're bringing your goods, right, your freight forward or your steamship line. But it's also telling CBP what kind of goods you're bringing into the country, because that's pretty important as well.
And then how are you getting, is this also is there public data sets for Mexico, Canada, or is that stuff you've acquired on your own?
So the some of it is public. Some of it you have to do a little bit of algorithm. I can't dive into it too much without revealing the secret sauce.
Yeah.
We'll call that our Coke recipe, I guess. But, why we're standing out in the marketplace is, one, ease of use. I think a lot of our competitors are being too aggressive around data that the average person, salesperson, person who works in the office, like the end user. I think people just forget the end user. And I think that's where our platform really helps. But two, with our North Star being better every day, I think we're always going to be most inventive in the marketplace. So no, there's not something stopping somebody from entering the marketplace, in my opinion, but it's hard to catch up to where we are in our opinion. And two, we hire the best programmers possible. We think we already have the best team in the world, and we want to keep expanding that. So, those are kind of my two thoughts. But I welcome competition.
Forces you to be better, right?
100%. If there weren't competitors in the marketplace, I wouldn't do anything. I'd just sit back and collect money, and that's also not kind of fun. I like to steal market share. So
let's go through a couple of use cases of what do people use Import Yeti for. Just top 3 unique use cases, data sets. What can someone visualize and see?
Yeah. So there's 3 buckets that exist within our customer base, right? Logistics, people who are buying goods overseas, so supply chain purchasing, and then risk analysis. So number one, when we look at logistics is, you could be a domestic carrier or an international carrier, understanding where people are currently moving their goods. And so it obviously shows ocean lanes because it will show, hey, it left from Busan, landed in Long Beach, right? So if I'm an ocean carrier, sweet, I know exactly, I can move that. But even with domestic freight, we can see where that container finalizes. So that tells us not only drayage, because we know the drayage lane, but now we also understand full truckload. Because if we understand that the container is going to a distribution center at the zip code.
But how do you know that from the bill of lading?
Well, so if we know the container is being offloaded at a distribution center, we know that unless somehow they're consuming that good on site, or that's the final destination of the product or good, which 99% of the time with an ocean container, it is not. We know that then that distribution center has to have full truckload outbound from that facility. So cool things we can do is not only analyze that final destination to know, hey, their facility in Nebraska, Omaha, receives 68 containers of 40 feet of goods. That's this much cubic feet. That translates to this many 53-foot truckloads, right? That's instant calculation. You can instantaneously know how much volume they should have out of that facility every month. But two, we can look at things like what are the goods, right?
Quick,
sure, fire away. Sorry.
No, I'm just trying to wrap my head around.
I have these conversations all day with people who are deep in logistics time, and logistics is one of the fantastic industries where everything has jargon. So
ship lands at the port. It's offloaded.
Yep.
With your BOL, are you getting the final destination of that container? Or do you just get that, hey, it's coming to Long Beach or it's coming to New York? Or whatever?
Depends on how they write their BOL. Some people it's called a notify party. and that's how we use it in our data set. Notified party can either be the entity that cleared customs, so you'll see like a customs broker on there, which is something that customs brokers use quite a lot within our data set because, hey, if this person's clearing customs, I know I'm better at clearing beans than somebody else. But the other alternative is it'll list the final destination of the container itself. So say it's going to this distribution center, this warehouse, or hey, it's getting transloaded at this facility, which a transload is just taking it straight from the container onto a truck and then delivering it somewhere else, usually much farther inland into the United States. Because with containers, there's something called a last free day, which is basically after the container has been offloaded. Kind of depends by the company and the port, but essentially like 3 to 5 days is usually the window. You've got 3 or 5 days to take that container, offload it, and get it back to the ship, or else you're going to get charged like $125 a day, and those rack up really fast. So really, the way that ocean container movements are focused around is get it to the port, get it to a warehouse, and then those goods will be transported somewhere else.
And then the empty containers go back to the...
Exactly. So that way they can keep churning and that ship can leave.
Do the ships go back empty or they go back full?
They usually have containers waiting there. So they'll usually have, basically once a ship gets offloaded, one, they're not offloading every container that exists within their ship, right? They're usually, it's these column 1 to 29 and rows B through Z are the ones. And then the rest of it's staying on because this port is actually now going to Tacoma, Washington after it lands in Long Beach. It's very complex, but it will never be completely empty.
Okay.
That won't happen. Like they'll even move empty
containers. No, but the containers going back on the ship are empty.
They will always be empty, yes.
Got it. Okay, sweet. So you calculate that's one use case. What else? So this is for like truckers who want to, like, I don't know if truckers is the right word, but like
truckers, brokers, freight forwarders, and customs brokers are kind of the four main people.
They're finding potential clientele.
Yeah, they're using this to find their ICP is what you're doing. You're finding your ICP. Hey, I know that if they have these parameters based off of the data in Import Yeti, this is going to be a win for me. And that ICP changes by company. But at the end of the day, you're using the data to make sure you're reaching out to people that you know fit your clientele.
What's the lag between the BOL and you getting it on the site?
Yeah, so we update our data on a monthly basis. Usually it takes, so we only get the data from CBP after the container has been returned to the port and that BOL has then been sent to CBP. So it's already a 3 to 14 day lag between the container actually being returned and us getting the data. So that's why we do it on a monthly basis.
The reason I ask
historical.
Is the lead not lost at this point? Containers returned, and then you get the BOL, and then maybe another 15 days of whatever, right? So now the stuff has been in the U.S. for a month at this point, in wherever it's going.
So people,
is it still valuable for whoever wants to like move this?
People don't change their supply chains overnight at all. So knowing what they did last month, they're more than likely doing it this month. But our data goes all the way back to 2015. So you can look at these trends and say, hey, they've been importing
every 3 months.
Yeah, they've done 82 containers into Long Beach since the invention of sliced bread, right? Yeah. They've been doing it since Uber started. That's a good example, actually. So you can look at that data and understand, this is where it is. 2, they're always going to have distribution facilities where they are. So even if maybe they sent it to Los Angeles port instead of Long Beach port one month, that it's still ending up in Carson, California. So the data is not meant to take an existing container that's live that they're having issues with. The idea is, I know that this is what they're consistently moving month over month. Let me call them and say, hey, I know that you're always doing this. I can do it.
What's the second use case?
So purchasing overseas. Huge, massive. That's why Dave even made the tool in the first place. So you can search, I want to specifically find toys that are not made in China. You can add other parameters around it, like I only want to look at suppliers who move at least 30 containers in the United States, or you could even say, hey, I only want to work with toy producers who work with Mattel. So you can do that with any and every product, and you can search to your heart's content to find the supplier that matches the kind of good you're looking to do, or if you're looking to replicate something that somebody else may be doing. And so we have a ton of companies. In fact, 16 of the Fortune 100 companies use us in their purchasing departments.
Nice.
And they use this to instantaneously find people overseas who can make the types of goods or the raw materials that they need to buy.
And do you also facilitate reaching? I know last time I used the site, there's an option for me because there was a couple like clothing brands I really liked, but I'm like, they're made in India. And I was like, Indian in me will not pay the fucking $150 for a shirt.
Best price.
Let me try to find and connect with the actual supplier. Be like, hey, just fucking give me 10 of these because I wear these all the time.
Yeah.
But I never got in touch with them. But
getting in touch is usually the hardest part with foreign suppliers. And we actually track contact data on our site if it's listed on the BOL. That's how we found the mug suppliers. We WhatsApp the number that we had on file for them, and it wasn't the person who was like in charge of purchasing, but they're like, oh yeah, here you go. So usually finding contacting suppliers is usually the number one problem that people have, and so we try and solve that as much as possible by using hot links to Google, LinkedIn, Alibaba, etc.
And one or two more use cases.
Yeah, so risk analysis, if you are somebody who works in financial risk and I'm investing in this company, I want to see, with tariffs, but in any situation, if we went to, war with China tomorrow, not just a trade war, but like an actual war, how much risk are we at by investing in this company? That's something that's been a huge use case for us. And then, we see a lot of other random ones. The interesting one that I always put out there was we actually stopped a sex trafficking ring with the data. Somebody was using ventilated containers for a product that didn't need ventilation, and it was always traveling on the same ship. And so they went in and did a whole bust around it and actually found an entire sex trafficking ring. So that is not a normal use case of the platform, but it kind of is a great example of how you can use this data to find anything. We've had
what mind blows me is that it's still possible. Like in my mind, with all the tech available,
right,
it should be hard to like smuggle stuff and like do these kinds of things.
Yeah.
Again, very naive opinion, but like it just tells you how smart people can. Like I've seen all these like YouTube videos of like crackdowns at the Mexico-U.S. border of like drug trafficking.
Yeah.
It just dumbfounds me.
Yeah.
The level of innovation to hide something in plain sight.
Yeah.
And it still goes undetected. Like if they're catching one, there's probably 10 that went by that wasn't caught, right? But
yeah, there's some interesting things that you can do as well, because there's a website called marinetraffic.com that actually tracks live where ships are, and it uses their GPS signal. And sometimes those ships will turn it off for a suspicious amount of time. And so we've had people combine that data with our data set and say, okay, they're constantly bringing in coffee, and then they stop for 6 hours in near Colombia, and then all of a sudden they retract near Cuba, and it's like, oh, I wonder what's happening there, right? So there's a lot of really cool things, and so I'm not an expert in everything that our data set can do, and that's kind of one of the fun parts of our job. Is I feel like at least every week I'm getting somebody with a new use case. I mean, somebody's using this data to stop whales being killed because certain vessels are traveling too fast when they come to coastlines and hitting whales. And so people are reaching out to companies and saying, hey, based on your ESG goals, one of your things is to protect the environment. You have used a shipping line that doesn't slow down and has killed 36 whales in the last year.
How do they associate the whale killing to that?
Yeah, so our data set shows you what vessel it specifically came across on. So you can say,
and they're
hey,
tracking where the vessel was.
Exactly. So this organization already had all this data around what vessels were breaking that rule.
Got it.
They just didn't know who was using those vessels. So then they combined that with our data set. Instantaneously, we know, hey, if they're constantly shipping on this vessel through this steamship line, we can tell them that basically, your container was probably on the boat when it hit it.
Random question.
Yeah.
If I'm a company in the U.S., I order something from China, India, wherever. How many different companies from that manufacturing plant to it reaching my warehouse, how many companies are holding the goods? Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like company sends on truck is different company.
How many transportation companies? Yeah. Usually what people are doing is they're booking it through a freight forwarder. So freight forwarders are really good at what's called door-to-door rates, which is the idea of I'm going to pick it up at the warehouse where you are getting it from overseas and then delivering it to you here in America. The beauty of transportation is there's always a subcarrier. So low end, maybe 3, high end, maybe 8. It truly depends on the location. There are, like China, for example, you're probably having it, if you booked it through a freight forwarder, you're having some form of Chinese transportation company pick it up at the warehouse. Probably the port itself is going to offload it into the container, the container onto the ship. The ship will take it, and then it'll offload here in America and then go on a truck here. On your more expansive ranges, it could be something where, hey, this is, the warehouse itself, fine Italian goods, right? It's in Sicily. Well, Sicily is not accessible to a port within 10 minutes. So it's going to have to go on a one truck to at least go to another distribution center to then go out towards where the port is. So it really depends on geolocation.
Got it.
But I mean, yeah, you're going to have a lot of different goods to touch it.
I was thinking the number would be like 15 because like I'm thinking there's so many like middle players of like the container is owned by someone else is shipping the container, the ship is owned by someone. Like,
yeah,
I'm
usually the shipping companies, like the actual steamship lines, have their own containers. Like if I'm booking a Maersk shipment, I'm in a Maersk container. Like it's not Some people own their own containers, and those are people who would probably use it with intermodal transportation as well, having it go on an actual rail line. So some companies ship so much that they buy their own containers, or transportation companies will buy their own containers just because they need them. But majority of the time, if you're using an ocean container, it's usually the steamship line's container.
What's the most profitable part of the logistics supply chain?
Where you can get away with it? No. It really depends. I liked drayage because it was decent margin and high volume. So I usually was a high volume player. With the biggest
Drayage is port to distribution center.
Probably where you make the most money is air freight, because
Okay.
it's usually just in time product. It's something where, hey, there's this one specific bolt that's made for our, car production is a great idea. We have this one specific nut for this specific, tool that puts all the seat belts into your Volvos. And if that part doesn't come here in the next hour, every hour our machine line is down, we lose $1 million in revenue. Those are the kinds of shipments where you're going to make the most money. So it's got to fly on a jet. It then has to go on like a Sprinter van, which is, you've seen them. It's what you can rent from U-Haul.
Yeah.
And that has to get to the facility as fast as possible. And I've done some of that stuff, but that's.
How do you even find that opportunity?
Just, that was kind of one of my favorite things about logistics, and kind of what I still continue to do at Import Yeti is learn about people's businesses every day. So, automotive production, jet engines. I had an account back in the day where I was doing jet engine repairs for the military government. So it would literally drive with a team driver, so it had to nonstop go from the Air Force base to the engine repair facility. And that thing would run empty or full every time. And that was a whole lot of money, but it was also very important because if the F-35s can't fly, we got a bigger issue. So it's when there is, it's a good, fast, cheap triangle. If people need it fast and they need it good, that's where you're going to make the most money.
I went to Auburn University in Alabama a couple of weeks ago. I was driving from Atlanta Airport to Auburn, and I passed by a Kia water tank. I don't know what it was, but on the drive back, I was just looking at how large that Kia manufacturing facility is.
Oh, yeah.
It just blew my mind of like that whole town just runs on Kia.
Yeah.
And Kia being there, and there's trucks constantly going in and out of there, just nonstop.
Oh, yeah.
I'm assuming it's a 24/7 plant.
Yeah, the Mercedes plant in Vance, Alabama is also pretty big if you go by there.
And I was just like, and then I'm guessing it's not that. Is Atlanta a port? Atlanta's a port, right? No.
Savannah, Georgia is the port for
Okay,
Georgia,
yeah.
which is about 130 miles from Atlanta.
Okay.
Give
So
or
I'm
take.
assuming that.
Don't fact check me in the comments, please.
And I was just like thinking about there's so much that's probably coming in on trucks, and like that like small bit of like 300 miles is probably constantly just trucks going back and forth.
Looking at the transportation system within America and how it's really built around 53 wheelers is a very interesting thing if you ever dive into it.
It's built around what?
Around 53 wheelers. 53 foot trucks. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
53 foot trucks. It's really, 18 wheelers are one of the most important things, and there's a reason why certain roads get paved and some don't, and it's commercial traffic.
I was in Alaska a couple of weeks ago, and we went up to the Arctic Circle, but after the Dalton Highway at some point becomes a gravel road. Yeah. And I didn't know about like the ice trucker show that does that, but it wasn't that bad a road. It was like not icy, like summer's coming. So this was like 3 weeks ago. Yeah. So it's not that bad to drive on, but the amount of truckers on it and the speed at which they're driving on this hilly gravel road is just. And then when I saw ice truckers, a random YouTube clip, these guys are like driving at 80 because they're like, I got to hit this time because this town needs it. A really small window, to your point of just like when it's there, it's built and it works because someone needs it. Yeah. And it's worth a lot more money for the goods the amount of money you lose for this not happening is so much that it doesn't matter how much this costs. Truck drivers also make like 120, 130 grand on the low end, I want to say. Yeah. Because there's I was at Indeed.com for a couple of years, and trucking was a big segment of like
trucking
trying to figure out how to tap that.
Aggressive.
Yeah.
Aggressive.
But I also heard there's pretty high churn because
Yeah.
Like you're willing to go to another company who's going to pay you like 5K more for that.
At Challenger Motor Freight, which was the asset-based company I worked for, one of our selling points was that our driver retention was 60%. National average on the industry was like 130. It was great. I remember when they first told me that, they're like, yeah, 60%. I was like, we should not be putting this in a document. Are you kidding me? And they were like, no, we're like half the industry average. I was like, you're kidding me. Like I did not know that when I walked in there. But yeah, truck drivers turn over constantly.
Also, I heard that not a lot of people want to be truck drivers, so there's like a shortage.
You gotta like the driving time. You gotta like the road. Driver health is probably one of the bigger things that I think is a tough point. You're sitting in a cab the whole time. That's not good for your blood flow. That was something I always appreciated about Challenger Motor Freight was they invested a lot of money in driver health. They're actually one of the few companies that allows pets in the actual company-owned trucks.
Oh, interesting.
Because there's different levels of truck drivers where some own their own trucks and they're called owner-operators, etc. But I
heard a bunch of owner-operators went bankrupt after COVID because like during COVID there was a big boom and there's like a flat line or plateau or whatever you call it. But I read a couple articles. I want to say like some FreightWave articles of.
Yeah, FreightWave is fantastic. We was about to learn about that. Yeah, that was one of the main reasons I actually joined Anthill was I was tired of how truck drivers were being treated and there wasn't enough resources for them. And that was one of the cool things about Anthill was it was a resource there. They could be on the road and text people about it. So, no, I do think truck driving is a very strenuous job. We ask a lot of them. They have to drive 8 hours a day. I just drove back from Tuscaloosa this weekend for the A-Day spring game. Spring practice now, unfortunately. But, my back hurts from the 9-hour drive. Like I can't imagine driving that much every day. So, yeah, truck drivers, they're fantastic. They're the backbone of our economy. And I always will step up and say they need better treatment because that is a underappreciated job. And I remember one of the reasons I got in quite trouble with one of my customers one time was he told me that they wouldn't unload my driver because he didn't speak English well enough, and I told him to go F himself on the phone. So that was one of the moments where I was like, this is total BS. So
the only thing that pisses me off is I drive a 2-lane highway when I go to work quite a bit.
When they pass each other,
and none of them will budge. Yeah, but also we're going up a hill, so you slow down because you have a big load.
Yeah.
And
there's limiters on those trucks.
That's the only time that I'm just like, why? Just one person let the other one go by, or you just don't overtake at that point when you know you're gonna go up a turn. But that's the only thing. But
some of them have limiters where they can't go over certain miles per hour.
Yeah,
and so that's when I get frustrated. I'm like, if you know that you can't go faster than 70, don't pass.
Yeah.
Don't pass. Yeah. It's also more efficient to be behind somebody with the wind. So it's like NASCAR with drafting. So I'm always like, you guys are actually saving money by being in a line. But
what's exciting you right now with this space? Just Import Yeti, what you're doing. What's exciting you? Is it AI? Is it use of tech? Like, what's top of mind for you in this space?
Yeah, I think I'm just excited with how much people are adopting the data. I think that's something where I think people sometimes get a bad rap of like, oh, they don't really pay attention to data. But I think our user base is so fantastic at finding underlying things. And so what excites me is I think there is going to be a continued trend of people using data more.
Yeah, 100%.
Not just in logistics, but supply chain. And I think the more that people can understand correlation, causation, I'm a big data nerd. And so if you can start figuring out correlation from data, hey, if we see these data points, we can assume with a 90% probability that this is happening, which is a lot of what we're starting to add to our platform, which is super exciting. But I love seeing people get that. And I love sort of seeing the aha moment where, oh, okay. Because, one of the greatest examples I give is with inland freight, right? There's rail terminals where containers will be sent to. Each vessel has their own contract with different rail lines. And so we always get asked all the time about inland freight. Where is it going? What rail depot? Well,
when you say inland freight, you mean stuff going to the...
Like stuff that would land in Houston and then go rail to Dallas. And here in Dallas, we have the UP and the BNSF, right? So I know it's going to Dallas. I know it's more than likely getting railed out here. What of these two terminals is it actually at? Well, each vessel actually has a contract with either the UP or the BNSF. So if we actually use the vessel that it came on from the BOL, we can now, with very good correlation, assume whether it went to the UP or BNSF.
But how do you know who has a contract with who?
That is something that somebody actually gave to us recently. So shout out to if that person's watching. Somebody gave us that, and so we're adding that in the platform pretty soon, which will be very, very exciting.
Why does someone want this level of granularity? Why do you want to know where it's at in Dallas?
UP and BNSF are, I think, 30 miles apart, so your pricing is a lot different. You could send a.
So this is for someone who's like potentially saying, "Hey, I know you have a truck here."
Exactly.
Got it.
Hey, I pick up from the UP all the time. I know that you're in Las Colinas, and
Got it.
here's my rate to Las Colinas, right? So, but I think that's an example where thanks to our user base and talking with them,
you know this opportunity, and so you can
Exactly.
now add it back to your platform.
Exactly.
Right?
But you can see people have that aha moment, and you're like, that's awesome.
What's one opportunity that you think is opportunity problem not being tackled, served in this logistic shipping supply chain space?
That's a loaded question. So many things. I don't know.
Top of mind, one or two opportunities that someone listening, if they're even remotely industry.
Can't give away my next business opportunity.
But I thought you're all in Import Yeti.
Hey, Import Yeti could be part of that. I think some of the biggest opportunities are still around automation.
Okay.
How do we take that sales process and how do we make it more efficient? I think people still do a lot of stuff in this industry manually. And once we can, blockchain was like a big thing for a while. I don't think it needs to be on the blockchain. It was just a hot, that's an annoyance of me is AI, blockchain, et cetera. People hop on it. I'm like, we've had these things for a long time. It's just top of mind.
Show me the use case.
Right. Like, okay.
Stop saying blockchain. Show me how you're going to use it. How does it help me?
All of a sudden, NVIDIA gets a, multi-billion-dollar valuation and people are like, oh, AI is the future. And it's like, well, like machine learning has been around and artificial intelligence has been around for a long time. You just are now calling it that. But I think using tools to automate things that are just repetitive that people don't like, there's not a lot of thought process in picking up the phone and calling a truck driver and asking where they are. But it's something that we have to do, and it's a manual process. And so if we can automate these things, then we have a huge opportunity in making our businesses more efficient and taking a lot of headaches away from a lot of people. So I think, I went out to Manifest in Las Vegas. There's a whole lot of cool things going on. I would highly recommend going to that conference if you want a fun trip to Vegas. They actually give discounts the first time people who go, so that's cool. But yeah, I think that's one of the biggest areas where I think we are not even remotely close to touching where it could be is automation and
Nice.
using technology to take the tasks that are repetitive and redundant and make them automated.
Is it apprehension of the people in the industry to adopt? Is it a lack of innovation? Like, where do you think the problem is?
I think it's the problem everywhere is like people are sometimes scared of technology. Like you get the, this is going to take away my job type of thing. And it's like, well, it could take away one job, but now if you're more efficient, the whole company as a whole makes more revenue and you can build more jobs from that. And that's a tough discussion for sure. That's not something I want to dive in here today, but I think you're always scared.
I think it's a mixture of apprehension plus lack of understanding of like, I think there's a big group of like people who are willing to do it, but no one's willing to explain how it affects. How should they think about it? How should they even use this in the strategy? No one's saying, here's this AI tool. Here's how you can help and benefit. Yeah. Everyone's like, hey, use this. But no one's doing the work to help these people get to the point where they understand the value of actually using it.
Yeah. Value prop is one of the hardest things when it comes to software. How do I do this? And it sounds bad, but it was something we had to do at Anthill was, hey, this is doing the work of 5 HR managers, like, if you need budget for it, that's where it is. And that sounds horrible, but that's kind of how the C-suite makes decisions. And it's a rough truth. And, sometimes you have to realize that, sometimes technology does have to take out redundant jobs. And we've seen it throughout history. And I think some people forget that. Like, people used to have jobs as washing clothes. And then we invented the washing machine, So cotton gin, same thing, right? It took out jobs that were just working. So those kind of things are always going to happen in history. And that's sometimes the downside of technology, but new things always emerge. So I think people are always scared to adopt. Why I think it works a lot for us at Anthill, and we're always willing to try new things. If you do the crawl, walk, run method, test it. Does it actually provide that value? You can do small steps with anything. You don't have to, I think everybody thinks, I got to sign the 3-year contract immediately. No, just try it out. If there is a use case, expand on it. If that use case continues, expand on it again. You don't have to jump off the deep end. You can wade 100%. Into anything.
100%.
I think IBM had a great ad during the Masters, actually, where they said, AI doesn't have to be massive. We can do small solutions for small problems. And so you don't have to go full bore on anything. You can solve small problems and be just fine.
Well, that's all I had for you. I appreciate the time. I know we're on a 5 o'clock clock, but what do you want to plug? We'll plug you again. Where can people reach out? How do they get this swag?
Yeah. James at importyeti.com, the Yeti at importyeti.com, Team Yeti at importyeti.com. Just go on our website, importyeti.com, play around with it. we'll probably reach out to you in some way because we've talked about it here on the platform. Insert clip here. But yeah, talk to us, check out the data. We love to hear any and everything that you're looking to solve. And we love working with people to find out the solutions that can actually help your business grow. So reach out to us. I promise we're going to be the easiest SaaS company you've ever worked with.
Thank you for coming on.